Okay, welcome to Seward Sound Words here on a misty July day. I'm very happy to be back in the booth. We have a guest today. Susan Roebuck is here to share some excerpts and stories about her book, Fox Island Stories. Susan did a book signing at the Seward Community Library a couple days ago on Saturday. That went really well. And I just got this book and just met Susan, so I'm really excited to talk to you more here today, right live on the air. But just having the book for a few days, I am very interested. I read the beginning and was pulled right in. And then just kind of paging through, she did a lot of drawings in the book, which I really love seeing. They're beautiful and just add a lot. And lots of like short subtitle chapters, kind of a real nice format and layout to it. There's letters in here and thick book. So really excited to hear things read and to just experience more about the whole story behind these Fox Island stories. So Susan, I want to thank you for getting in touch with me and kind of getting us back in the booth when summer comes along. It can take, we have some lapses, but we're always going to be back because there are just so many wonderful writers in Seward or attached to Seward via things they've written about Seward. And Susan is one of them, and she's here right now. So thank you all for listening here on 91.7 KIBH FM Seward as we dive into our new episode with Susan Roebuck. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. So I'm Susan Roebuck. This is my book, Fox Island Stories. And the beginning of the book tells about my life in New Mexico before I came to Alaska. I'm from New Mexico, so I'll just quickly cover that. My story starts in New Mexico in 1960 when we moved there. My family moved there. I was a few months old at the time, and I had two older sisters who were 3 and 4 years old. My father was a geologist with the Atomic Energy Commission, and that's why we lived in Grants. And my mother was an artist. By 1982, both my sisters were living in Alaska, and I was in college, and I took my college summer break and decided to come and visit my sisters in Alaska. So that's how I got up here that summer.
Cool.
So I'll just start with reading the part that starts Alaska. The big spruce log in Ann and Neil's front yard lay soggy and cushioned with moss. I sat on it playing with their tabby kitten and looking around. What a strange place I'd come to. Unlike New Mexico's vibrancy, Alaska was cool shades of green, white, and blue. Here in the woods, suspended moisture softened contours. Ann and Neil lived on the hillside in Anchorage, on the foothills of the Chugach Mountains, at an altitude just below the scrub spruce zone, which is just below the treeless alpine tundra. Tree level that far north is low, only about 1,500 feet. Not just the Chugach, but even some of their foothills are above tree level, and people live in neighborhoods up there above the trees. In New Mexico, tree level is at an alpine region not too often visited by humans. It was disoriented to see city suburbs above tree level. At that time of year in Alaska, the Earth's rotation brings dawn, day, twilight, and then dawn again. No darkness or stars, but a pale and delicate crescent moon hangs low to the horizon. During the midnight hours, not just the sky, but the light itself is velvety blue, like a blue light bulb shining in the mist. Little brown hermit thrushes sing, invisible on mossy branches, deep in shaggy spruce trees. The Chugach Mountains, icy and hard, like Stone Age spear tips, axe heads, and other weapon ends piled up against the sky, hold the city of Anchorage between themselves and the cold, dreary sea on a great sloped plain. If the mountains tipped up more, Anchorage would slip into Muddy Cook Inlet with its treacherous gray tides. In fact, some of Anchorage did just that during the Good Friday earthquake of 1964. I sat on a log and dragged a twig along it for the kitten to chase. It pounced, overestimating its velocity, and flipped off the log, and just that quick clawed its way back up. I laughed. I breathed a deep sigh of relief and pleasure and spruce tree scent. I was free. The house my sister and her husband rented belonged to an old-time Alaska couple who had moved to Anaktuvik Pass. Strange, unfamiliar Northland showed up in any window I passed. Spruce forest and snowy crags, pale northern sky. Inside, artifacts, dog sleds, bear skins, kayaks, caribou antlers, ceremonial masks, usiks, and ulus. Anne said usiks are walrus penises, which are bone, and ulus are women's knives with a curved rocking blade, good for separating whale blubber from whale skin. In their yard outside, a big orange inflated float, the type that is used for crabbing, shrimping, long lining, and such, hung on a rope from the bough of a spruce tree. It made the best swing. Swinging was something I could do well besides riding horses. I loved that free feeling. I got reacquainted with Anne, who, like her husband, had become a high school teacher. I hadn't seen much of her in the past few years. Some people say they see a resemblance between us. We both have brown hair, but hers is brunette brown and mine goldish brown. We both have brown eyes, but mine are regular sized and hers are big and dark. I am on the tall side, whereas Anne is petite. In my conversations with her, I discovered an older sister who was also a friend, a sister who listened and gave good advice and was happy to have me around. She was excited on my behalf for the adventures that awaited me in Alaska. Anne and Neil had been married about a year. Neil was small, like Anne, with an athletic build. He had short, dark hair, a slightly wide nose, and eyes like an elf, adding up to an open, friendly-looking face. A springiness to his body and movements matched his playful nature. As Anne and Neil prepared supper my first evening in Alaska, Neil opened the double porch doors to the blue light and the forest, the song of the hermit thrush, and me on the swing. He clicked a cassette into the stereo and sent the guitar and harmonica of Bob Dylan's Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid outdoors to blend with birdsong. I swung and listened, enthralled by being in Alaska and yet listening to this music, this story that took place in haciendas and dusty settlements in the mountains of southern New Mexico.
Nice. Love all that. Arriving in Alaska, like our first, I think we all have this memory, and there often is like a magic to it. Like this is it. It doesn't get better than this, Yeah, so many wonderful details. I really enjoyed that. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very poetic. A lot of metaphors in there. I like that. Like the spirit to the Stone Age spear tips, like the spruce trees, and just a lot of emphasis on these real Alaskan kind of, the spruce so much, the look of them, the smell of them, all the artifacts around the house you were at. Really enjoyed that list and just that scene. Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I can go on to how I first met Fletch and got started on Fox Island.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds great.
Neil and Anne hosted the end of school party the night Fletcher and I met. When he arrived at the door, Neil said, "Hey, Hatfield, come in. Meet Susanna, Anne's sister. Want a beer?" "Hi," said Fletch in a friendly way. Someone's dog jumped on Neil, who was holding a potato chip. The owner yelled over the party noise, "When he does that, just tell him to get down." Neil struck a disco pose and shouted, "Get down!" He was playful and fun, and along with Anne, had listened to my heartbreak story with a thoughtful, attentive manner that I found comforting. He and Fletch had known each other for years, and with my sister, they often spent weekends skiing, hiking, or boating. In the crowded kitchen, sometime in the wee hours, everyone sang Willie Nelson's Crazy, and outside, some old custodian or art teacher pushed me on the swing, so high I could touch spruce boughs 20 feet off the ground. I certainly didn't need to be inside, surrounded on all sides, trying to socialize. I swished through the cool evening air and listened to the partiers' drunken rendition of Crazy, slowed down too much and complete with both harmonies and disharmonies. Fletcher came to the doorway, leaned there, and smiled at me. Before he left, just as the sun lit the horizon bright again, he said, "Susanna, would you like to help me run fishing charters this summer?" I looked him right in the eye. I wasn't a bit disturbed that I knew nothing about boats or the sea or how to fish in the ocean. I was thirsty to learn, thirsty for adventure, and I liked this man. I could just see myself sailing Alaskan waters with him. I said yes.
Nice. The arrival continues as you kind of, this is still first kind of months or early in your Alaska. You're now down in Seward, is that correct? Or?
Well, school was just out,
Okay.
so this summer season is starting. And so Fletch is just getting ready to start running charters in Homer.
Homer, okay.
In Homer, first of all,
Yep.
and then we came over here pretty soon after starting chartering in Homer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So between that opening scene where you read at your sister's, kind of your first night in Alaska, where
pretty close.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So like within a
probably the first few days.
Yeah. The arrival continues, like that magic that we all have upon arrival in Alaska. I think the first couple nights, you know, it goes on. You know, you learn more. And I love this thirst for adventure. This thirst, like it's just taking me back. And I know listeners, you know, obviously there's a lot of people who lived in Seward their whole lives, and they'll connect to this in ways. But like the Sewardite who has transplanted here, like we have, I think will really connect to, you know, just this learning more, like the layers to Alaska, and how it just even gets better than that magical first night, as far as like, oh, all the just amazing things you can do here. This storybook kind of life that I think growing up outside of Alaska, we dream about Alaska, and these are big dreams. And then you come up here and like, yes, it matches those big dreams, and you learn the details to those big dreams, and you can actually live them out. It lives up to it.
It does live up to it. Yeah.
Which I think is really cool.
I do too.
Thirsty to learn, thirsty for adventure. I said yes. So now you're gonna do fishing charters in the summer and follow this current where it leads.
Yes, I'll talk a little bit about Homer. Beginning in Homer, it's just about a paragraph.
Cool.
After meeting Fletch and saying yes to his proposal to help him running charters at Ann and Neil's end of school party, I promptly moved with him to Homer. When we weren't in Kachemak Bay running charters or in the harbor cleaning fish and mopping up the boat, we were at his cabin. The little A-frame with the red door clung to the edge of Olson Mountain on a bluff high above town. Up there, wind blew constantly, wild creatures scurried about in the head-high grass, and pushkis, a wild parsnip named by the early Russians, and wildflowers shot up everywhere. The place reminded me of those scenes in the old Star Trek series where Captain Kirk beamed down to a strange planet. Heavy clouds dropped fine rain from just a few feet above our heads. When the clouds parted, the view from our perch opened up on the fishing hamlet of Homer, far below us on the blue-gray waters of Kachemak Bay. Beyond the bay stood mountains heavy with glaciers, and beyond them were more mountains and more glaciers. Early each morning, we climbed into Fletcher's red VW pickup and drove down the dirt track from the cabin to the harbor on the Homer Spit. Tutka. Fletcher had a big black dog named Tutka with brown and navy blue eyes. He was the best, a true boat dog. He'd ridden in everything from a canoe to the big blue Alaska ferry, the Tustamina. He could jump into any boat, big or little, including a canoe, without tipping it. He'd ride where he could keep his center of gravity appropriate to the boat. All I had to do was look at him for him to wag his tail, lay his head in my lap, and tell me how much he adored me. Fletcher, Tutka, and I were always together. I learned how to fish for halibut, set shrimp pots, and drive the boat. I already knew how to help people fish, having taught the little kids who lived near me when I lived in Wyoming. That was during my teenage years. But back then, we fished for trout on the shores of the Platte River, not for giant flatfish with eyes on one side out in the ocean. I learned how to rig the heavy monofilament line with a 3-inch hook and 8 or 10 ounce weight, the size of a golf ball, instead of 6-pound test line with a small hook and a little bitty weight. And I knew how to teach people to bait hooks, drop their line in till it hit bottom, set the hook when they got a bite, reel in, and not get tangled. I knew how to set the drag, when to encourage and when to give suggestions, and when to sit back and watch the fun. This was my first summer in Alaska, and I was helping to provide great fun and adventure for people. I took to this role with glee. Tutka was right there with me. Fletcher.
Yeah.
After college, Fletcher had joined the Army and come to Alaska from Vermont. At that time, a person could stake a land claim in Alaska just by going to see it and filling out some papers. On a dismal, rainy day, he and a friend took a skiff and went out and staked land on Fox Island, 14 miles out in Resurrection Bay from what was then the raggedy little town of Seward. His claim covered about a third of the beach in Northwest Cove on Fox Island. Years had passed, and now Fletcher got the idea to turn his claim property into a wilderness lodge where people could come and stay in cabins and go fishing and sightseeing. He felt the time was right. He said, "What would you think of helping me build a lodge there? Ours will be the only place around. It's very remote, no electricity, no running water, no phones. The nearest road is 14 miles away in Seward. Would you like that?" "Yes, I thought you would," he said, smiling. We loaded the boat onto its trailer one morning and left Homer behind, driving up one side of the Kenai Peninsula and down the other, arriving in Seward late that afternoon. On the way, Fletcher said Resurrection Bay was narrower than Kachemak and that it was really more of a fjord, and because of that, the landscape was more rugged, and he felt it seemed like more of a wilderness than Kachemak Bay. Seward existed at the head of it, he said, because the bay was ice-free in winter. Seward was settled in 1903 when a shipload of men arrived from Seattle to begin a railway that would reach to Anchorage and on into the interior of Alaska. Seward is now a lovely little town, clean and charming and welcoming, right on the beach with a thriving tourism business. But at that time, Seward was still a rough little place. As we pulled in, I noticed its dusty buildings and banged up assortment of cars and trucks, lawns decorated with fishing floats and wooden boat hulls full of flowers, loose dogs and children and men everywhere, working mostly in the marine industry in some capacity. There wasn't much tourism. The people of Seward were unpretentious and friendly. We slipped the boat off the trailer into the harbor, tied it up, and headed back into town for dinner. In Seward, Alaska, we dined at the closest thing to a 5-star restaurant I had yet to experience, despite having lived in Albuquerque and Wyoming. The Van Gilder restaurant is gone now. It was in a building that I suppose had been built when the railroad link was complete. When hopes and ambitions were at their height, the Van Gilder's restaurant was dark inside, cushiony red, ornamented with deep polished wood, gilded wallpapering, red velvet drapery, and crystal chandeliers. I had filet mignon. Fletch ordered the lobster. We slept on the boat that night in the harbor, and the next morning we were on our way to my new home, Fox Island.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wonderful. Susan Roebuck reading from her book Fox Island Stories here on Seward Soundwords on 91.7 KIBH FM Seward and on our YouTube channel at Sacktown. Fantastic. I'm just right with you on this journey. This is fantastic. And going back, I mean, with the Seward history, just, you take time with these details with just some really lovely words, poetry again. And, it just makes sense to do that with the rich history of Seward as you paint that picture. Van Gilder Restaurant. So cool to hear about that. And then you can get lobster. Really cool. Love those details with the cushiony red gilded wallpaper, etc. 5-star. And I love the description of Seward, because it has changed from what I gather, being a student of the history of Seward, as we all are, you tourism more and more, and to go back to where it's a rough little place, rusty, banged up. There's a charm to that. People working hard, harbor industries, fishing industries. And it, is that really was the signature of it and kind of classified it to a degree. I think these elements are still there. Like I hear people are unpretentious and friendly, and that sounds true to me now as well.
Yeah.
Certainly the people who are related to these people that you saw back in, we're in the, give me the year.
80s,
this is
like
80s,
80,
yeah.
82.
Those families are still here, and those values that they instilled and their parents before them instilled are very much how I identify with Seward and the people I see on a regular basis. So that's really cool to see. And this is just so exciting, this homestead on Fox Island. I love the homestead just aspect of Alaska and history that, that could be done. And if you want to work hard and you have the drive and, stake out a claim and make it something. It's really cool for just the state and to believe in locals and the people who want to do that to help develop, because everything was just untouched. So really exciting. I know we're going to hear more.
Yeah.
But this is really fun. I'm excited to read the book.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I can read about getting to Fox Island.
Yeah, we're there now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this, and then I'll tell a little bit about the guy that helped us on Fox Island. So there were 3 of us.
Okay.
And
so this is you down here.
That's me.
We got Fletch somewhere.
And this is Fletch.
Yep.
And this is John Tuttle.
Okay.
Okay.
And you had told me when we met that your mother did this painting. Is that right?
My mother painted the painting for the cover.
Which is awesome.
Thank you.
And I, just going back, maybe we touched this, but like product, the author product from your mom, who's an artist, a painter, obviously does fine work. And then your dad as a geologist, that sounded really interesting too.
Yeah, it is
Pretty
kind of
neat.
interesting.
Yeah.
Especially after watching Oppenheimer.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking of that as well. All right.
All right. Fox Island. Another A-frame, as tiny as Fletcher's cabin on Homer, sat all alone on the beach. Its weathered gray was a shade darker than the many dead trees on the beach, which had succumbed to the '64 earthquake. For years, the cabin had stood alone, and few had passed its way. Local folks said a fisherman built it. Others said it was the work of a wanderer. Instead of the door being on the front, like the cabin in Homer, the door was on the back, facing the bulk of the island, which rose up almost vertical a few yards away. Resurrection Bay and all the Kenai fjords and beyond in either direction, all the many miles to Prince William Sound in one direction and to Cook Inlet the other, were mostly deserted then. A few commercial fishermen plied the waters, and the occasional adventurer came through. A small number of boat captains ran fishing charters on weekends. Those with recreational boats ventured from the harbors on weekends. A family-owned sightseeing tour had just started up out of Seward. Thriving populations of animals filled the fjords, intermingling and coexisting in all their various habitats. Several kinds of whales, harbor seals, stellar sea lions, Dahl's porpoise, and sea otters, along with countless species of fish, eagles, songbirds, numerous varieties of seabirds by the hundred thousands, land otters, porcupines, bears, mountain goats, mountain sheep, moose, foxes, wolverines, and more. We set up home in the tiny cabin, and Fletcher stated the obvious. We needed more cabins if we were going to have guests. He went to Anchorage and came back with a 1-ton truck. Tutka and I stayed in the boat in the Seward Harbor while he was gone. When he returned, we visited a one-man lumber mill deep in the damp woods north of Seward, at the head of the bay. The man lived next to his mill in a truck camper that was nearly completely buried in sawdust. In fact, it looked like a huge pile of sawdust until I looked closely and saw a door. I thought that was probably good insulation. Fletch bought the rough-cut lumber from him. We tied it in a huge bundle, hauled it to the harbor, slipped it off the truck into the water by stopping the truck suddenly on the boat ramp, and towed the bundle out to the island. It took 3 hours to tow enough lumber for the new 12 by 14 cabin. Already I had learned an awful lot from Fletcher. He knew how to find what he needed and get the help he needed. He could figure things out and make arrangements. He was respected and tactful and diplomatic and a good storyteller. People just loved him. I did too. In several ways, he reminded me of my father, kind, decent, and steady, and he always treated me well. He had a wonderful eye-twinkling chuckle. Fletcher was good-looking, too. He had almost black hair with good dark eyes and a thick beard, a mustache that curled upwards on the ends, making him look amiable at all times, and a strong, relaxed body. For a 38-year-old, his flexibility surprised me. He often sat casually with his legs crossed, Indian style. John Tuttle. Fletcher knew we needed extra help and contacted a friend of his named John Tuttle. John taught 7th grade workshop in Astoria, Oregon. He liked to spend his summers in Alaska. He was a working fiend, and he was just who we needed to help build our lodge. He showed up in Seward one day and came back to Fox Island with us, and now we were 3 or 4 with Tutka, though John would not have counted Tutka. He didn't seem to like dogs. John was in his 50s, short and strong, with a tan, bald head, fringed in curly iron gray hair, and a curly iron gray beard. He had big blue eyes and a big nose. He was always happy and nearly always loud about it. I would soon learn that he never minced a single word in his life and often got in trouble for that. He could be preposterously contemptuous and tactless. He could not accept in anyone what he perceived as laziness or unwilling to pitch in. He could treat people like a drill sergeant, though he didn't cuss. The 3 of us got busy right away and built the new guest cabin. I think I can stop there for a minute.
Sure.
And then,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. As we get John Tuttle on the page. Seward Soundwords here on 91.7 KIVH FM Seward, back in the booth, and it feels great. The details just keep coming out to me, and the character descriptions. I'm enjoying how you take so much time to really paint these characters, right? Like, it kind of connects to painting, like a portrait in some ways. You give the physical description, which of course is such a part of kind of a feel for someone, but then also kind of what they're like Tuttle is not going to tolerate laziness. And you just I don't know, you could tell that you took time to kind of come up with original ways to, as these people are introduced, to kind of have their picture on the page. And that's working.
Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, so much is Fox Island. I do want to touch on this, and I don't know, you have such a flow going now, so I hope, but I just, sometimes I forget to say stuff. So it's on my mind, like Fox Island has such a, just we look out at it, right? And it's just so interesting, right? This just hill in the middle of the bay there. And of course, Rockwell, Kent wilderness is a big big book out of Seward, big book on the Alaska canon. And so that I wonder, now it's of course readily available. I wonder, like, as you were writing your Fox Island book, which I'm gathering that you spent a lot more time than Foxwell Kent out there building these cabins and being a part of things. So that's interesting. But how did you kind of, I don't know, like the wilderness book, how did that affect, or did you think of that? Was that book around like in the 80s as much as it? I mean, it probably had a recent reprinting, the one I'm thinking of, but just kind of joining this, now we have at least two books about Fox Island, this little island in Seward, that are both, really fun experiences, and both have artwork, as I see your drawings in here.
Yeah.
So is there, I don't know. Can you talk a little bit about that, or any type of like connection, or just kind of like awareness of that book as you're doing your book, or even after, as both books have had a life now and continue to have life with readers?
Well, at that time, I do not think that Rockwell Kent's book was easily found in Seward.
Okay.
But Fletcher had a copy of it.
Oh, cool.
And I was able to, he told me about it, and I remember it. It was a hardbound book with a navy blue cover and not new, an older book.
Cool.
And he told me about it, and at the University of New Mexico, where I went to college. So in the early years, I was going back and doing a semester or two, trying to get, finish college at the end of the season. And so I did go to Zimmerman Library on the UNM campus. And way back in the stacks, I did find Rockwell Kent's book.
Cool.
They had a copy of it. And so it was, I remember it really kind of brought chills to see his book there in faraway New Mexico.
Yeah.
And eventually I did look for Rockwell Kent's, for the ruins of the goat shed.
Yeah.
Kent has a map in his book. I think it's a mural here in town now, maybe, or it was a map of Fox Island.
Yeah.
It showed the lake, and it showed where he lived.
Yeah.
And so 60 some years had passed since he left.
Right.
And I walked down, I had made a trail through the woods along the beach, and I knew that it had to be right about there where I was. I kind of walked in circles and held the map, his hand-drawn map. And then I saw foundation logs that were mossy and almost gone. I saw pieces of a wood stove and some wire from the fencing.
Cool.
And I doubt I know those logs probably have to be gone now, because another how many years have now passed.
Right.
There might still be a little bit of the wood stove and fencing there, but probably nobody has found it, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So that was
cool.
So cool to stand there and hear the ocean that he heard, and the sparkle through the forest that he saw.
Yeah.
And
that hasn't changed.
That has not changed.
A nice thing
yes.
with nature. Yeah.
Yes, it is nice. Yeah. And then later, Rockwell's grandson and granddaughter came out to Fox Island.
Yeah.
And so I do tell about that in here as well.
Go. Wonderful.
Okay. Yeah. I can find that section if you'd like.
Yeah. Do you need a moment? Yeah.
Yeah. Let me find a moment.
I would say, that I've been to Fox Island one time for the, the little tour with the buffet and such. And I was in heavy Seward research at the time for my book. And I was like, all right, I got to find where his cabin was, where's Olson's cabin, the Fox Farmer. And I did a frantic search, like I had a little bit of time. And I don't know, like it's almost kind of dreamy in my mind now as I look back, and I kind of found a little something like you're describing, perhaps. And I was like, maybe this is it, I don't know. But it was being on that search, like as you just captured so well, was like really exciting, to be like, this is where literary, history and just, I don't know. Yeah, it was fun. So
it is exciting when you suddenly feel that connection to the past. It's almost like spooky. Yeah. And it happens to me. So
and now your book, has that chance for future generations. I'm excited to hear, of Fletcher and your kind of, whole how this project advances and structures, and remnants and
Mhm.
perhaps to, because
Yeah.
I'm due to go back to Fox Island for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me take a second here and see if I can remember where I have that section with
Yeah, and it's okay if you can't recover it. I
Okay.
like what we've covered, but that is neat. I figured there was something, little curveball here on Seward Sound words, which we're not opposed to for those of you who listened in the past, but really fun here spending time with Susan Roebuck and her book, Fox Island Stories. This book came out in 2003 and has had a bit of a revival recently, which we're going to get into in a bit. But it's just neat how books have, you put the artwork out there, in this case, a book, and you've done your part, and whatever you can do to kind of, you know, um, publicize the book, what have you. But when you put a book out, it has chances and it's forever, it's a book. So that's such a wonderful thing about books. And then the audience can find it and react to it and be a part of the story of the book. So that's been a really neat thing about this project too. Looks like
it is fun.
Yeah.
All right. I did find the section here.
Cool.
It's called Rockwell Kent, American Illustrator. This is probably the fourth summer, I'm guessing. Fourth or fifth summer.
Okay.
Soon it was back to work for the three of us. Our first charter of the season, a family from Montana, was scheduled for Wednesday. And then for weeks afterwards, families, groups, friends, people by themselves, couples, all kept coming, enjoying life with us for a while at our lodge. I spent my days getting out and putting away fishing poles, organizing gear, welcoming new guests and giving them the tour, helping folks unload their load their gear, taking kids on nature walks, making lunches, coffee and cider, cleaning the boat, cleaning the cabins, cleaning the outhouses, splitting wood, crewing on the boat, fishing, building fires, cleaning fish, cooking, helping with repairs and maintenance, and painting pictures on rocks whenever I could. Fletcher and I just had to hang in there long enough to return our guests to Seward, and we would have our first days off in a month. It had been 4 exhausting weeks of rising early and working all day, especially for Fletcher, who stayed up later telling stories with our visitors. Then, rising earlier than either John or me, he made things ready for the day's fishing or whatever the guests wanted. The three of us by this time were frazzled and grumpy. For a change, and to get away from John, I decided to ride into Seward with Fletcher that day. On the way, a call came over the boat's radio. From what I could hear, it seemed to be someone who wanted to come back out with us to Fox Island. I tried to catch Fletcher's attention by narrowing my eyes at him with a look that said, "Don't say yes." He said yes. "Guess who that was?" he said extra cheerfully as he hung up the transmitter. "Chris Kent, Rockwell Kent's grandson, and his sister Kathleen." Oh, well, that changed everything. I was curious. After my second summer on Fox Island, Fletch had told me about Rockwell Kent in a letter. I then searched for and found an old hardbound copy of Kent's book Wilderness in a deserted wing of Zimmerman Library on campus. It had seemed like magic to pull from the stacks a book that told with an artist's passion of my island in winter and to read it in my room far away in New Mexico. It was 1918 when Rockwell Kent, famous illustrator, aged 36 and seeking a place to live far from what he felt was a money-hungry, status-seeking, war-loving society, journeyed to Alaska aboard the steamer Admiral Farragut. He brought his young son along, aged 9. His dream was simple, to live in Alaska near the sea. In a Seward cafe, he learned of an old man who lived alone on Fox Island. He borrowed a dory and, rowing out into the bay, happened to meet up with the man, an old Swedish farmer who had set up a fox farm on Fox Island. The old man was setting off for Seward for provisions. When he learned of Mr. Kent's search, though, he took Mr. Kent's bowline in hand and towed him and his son to Fox Island. Rockwell wrote about his first sight of Fox Island. It was truly sheer-sighted and immense, and for all we could discover, harborless, till a moment rounding the great headland of its northern end, the crescent arms of the harbor were about us, and we were there. So that's Rockwell's
Those
first.
are Kent's words.
Those are Kent's words.
Yeah. Nice.
I'll continue with having Kathleen out and Chris and Kathleen out, I think.
Yeah, cool opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I like this repetition of, you say yes early in an excerpt you read when Fletcher first offers to, do the charters,
Mm-hmm.
and then this don't say yes. He said yes. That's nice. For readers who
the frame or the book ending. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice.
Bringing those things back in.
Kent's grandson. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a nice visit with them, very, very much. And then she later came to visit me in New Mexico.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah.
Kathleen.
We're still Facebook friends.
Neat.
Yeah.
Cool connection. There
Mm-hmm.
we go. You had other excerpts you wanted to read too, so we can kind of get back to that. I don't want to knock you off the plan because I know you had a good one. It's really flowing well.
Okay. I might have a few pages to finish in that area. Let me see.
Yeah, take a moment. Thank you all for listening to a new episode of Seward Sound Words here on our YouTube channel at Sacktown. And it's brought to you by 91.7 KIBH FM Seward, local Seward radio. Susan Roebuck reading from her work, Fox Island Stories.
Okay, so this is learning how to drive the boat and just learning in general. From Fletcher, I learned how to drive the skiff with an outboard motor. I loved to watch how he would get into a skiff, placing his foot on the gunwale, stepping in and riding the boat in one smooth movement. He sat so relaxed in the stern, sitting on an overturned bucket usually, hand draped casually on the outboard steering shaft, and looking ahead to the waves or the destination, talking, laughing. It fascinated me, these things that people did well. As Fletcher was with boats, so John was with building. I watched and I learned. I sometimes felt out of my element and missed being in wild desert country and around horses, where I felt as skilled as John and Fletch. But as our first guests arrived and kept coming, the hardest thing of all to learn was how to be a good host, not just when I felt sociable, but all the time. Running a lodge was exhausting. Guests arrived to stay and go fishing or sightseeing on board the boat, which Fletch had named the Fox Islander. Every few days, we took them back to Seward and picked up a new group of eager people. Much to my dismay, my social confidence came and went without predictability. When I was on, but when I was off, I wanted to be where I didn't have to interact with people, yet they seemed to seek me out. My skittishness sometimes took an edge. I didn't like it when some well-meaning man began helping me with some task and then took over. Women wore me out with light conversation, bringing up subjects in which I had no interest or background, telling me long, involved recipes which I instantly forgot while I washed the dishes, while I fidgeted to be out of the kitchen, out of the cabin, out of range. I found myself unable to summon any knack for small talk. Sometimes such a crisis in confidence built and led to despair. I climbed the ladder to the cabin loft, sat on the floor, and cried. I longed to go off by myself. I couldn't go off for a hike in the woods or a paddle on the lake because now there were people around. Some curious person would ask where I was going, or Fletcher would need me to do something, or John would think I was lazy. Then that's how I saw it. Now I would know to take time off for an hour or half an hour with a sketchbook and pencils, a camera, or journal. In spite of these episodes, most of the time I knew I was having the time of my life. Many moments within days and even whole days on Fox Island were just pure glee. Guests left their everyday lives and became relaxed and vibrant when out with us. I loved seeing the happiness in their eyes and gestures and through them experiencing anew the wonder of finding oneself in such a place. My heaven as host on Fox Island was complete whenever our departing guests thanked me, telling me that they felt towards me as if I were their daughter or sister or friend, and asking John to take photos of Fletch and me with their family. Most of the guests at some point expressed admiration for the life I led, and I understood this. I had the exquisite awareness that I was having a never to be forgotten good time, a grand adventure in a spectacular setting. Fletch loved the outdoor life as much as I, and I was in a place I had come to love with all my heart.
Nice. Love that. Well, brought 2 sheets to write on, and I've written those up, so now I'm making notes in the book here. But I mean, this, tourism, right? We talked about kind of now there's tourism. Well, this sounds a lot like tourism and the season, what we go through right now. Working harder in the summer. This, it's such an interesting setup with okay, we're in Alaska because we love it. We love wilderness. We love art, right? You taking the break with the camera, the journal. But a part of it now is sharing that with visitors, right? And I think as artists and people who have a close connection with nature, maybe, customer service is that's what I'll call it, isn't as natural, right? It's certainly some else to be. And it does get tiring. It does get, but I love how you bring it back to, that reward of sharing it and being around people. I talked about the magic that you wrote about so well at your sister's for the first night. That you can get that feel from a guest out at your, remote cabins on Fox Island. And that is rewarding and that is nice. But I mean, I think that just really nails the customer service. There's better terms for it, but that's what I have now. Experience in the summer here. So that's pretty cool. You really wrote that well. I mean, I was right with you as far as like, no knack for small talk. Just please, I just want to get out. Can't get away. Want to bring like, all right, time to take a hike. Like
yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
I don't know how I slept on this book. I've seen it in stores, and I apologize, but I'm with you now. I don't know. So many books, so many good ones, but I'm looking forward to spending some time with this. I mean, there's about, as you just flip through, drawing every 3, 4, I'm going no more than 5 pages before there's a lovely drawing by Susan, all kinds of stuff. So that's such a fun thing and helps you turn pages, which I think is nice for any reader. I think of myself as a real reader, but I still like turning pages fast, and the art helps with that. Like, all right, I'm getting through it, So I just started a new book actually so I went to New tangent chance here, and then we'll get back on track. But having gone to New Mexico for the first time this spring in Arizona, I loved it. It was only in Las Cruces for New Mexico, more in Arizona, but I always try to find local literature. And so Tony Hillerman, I've been getting into, and just started a new book of his last night and turned the pages, and I'm excited to stay with that one and kind of put this other New Mexico writer right beside it for my summer reading. That'll be great. Another thing about the layout of the book are the letters, and you haven't read from one yet. Can you say a little bit about that? And then if there's more reading you want to do, we can go to that. Like how do the letters play into the whole read? Who are those between, or just whatever you want to share about that? Because I love that in a book for turning page ability, and also just you get these different voices, and letters are just neat. Overall, so.
So the letters I did keep a journal during these years, and I also saved letters. That's what people used to do back then. You had letters, they came in an envelope and they had a stamp, and then you saved them. And so I had all of those, and I incorporated those into the book for that reason, because they were another way of moving the story along and bridging the time that I was away during the school year. So I think I went back to Albuquerque for the school year of 82, 83. And then for the school year of 83, 84, I came up in December of 83. And from that point, I stayed in Alaska. So I actually finished school. I was able to make an arrangement with UNM to finish school at UAA.
Cool.
And still graduate from UNM. So I had really decided to be in Alaska.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a neat
So
arrangement. That sounds pretty modern, almost like
it was
being
kind of the dawn of that
cool.
kind of arrangement. Yeah,
Yeah.
it seemed like.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked also how you mentioned Rockwell Kent's winter, right? He was here for the month of March, a very wintry month. It went March and April, and you had seen Fox Island in the winter just yet. You're seeing it in the summer. So to kind of have that through his book, be able to envision and feel the winter on Fox Island. Well, now you're up here in December '83 for good, and maybe got to see it for yourself.
We went out. Yeah, we did go out. We used to go out before the season in March and sometimes after the season, and it was a completely different world. I remember coming down to Seward. It was probably March, and Seward was it was like 4 below or 4 degrees above. And just totally deserted and crystal clear blue sky, utterly silent, nobody about. And getting to the boat in the harbor is a completely different thing than in the summer. There's people around, and there's ice on the ramp, and then heading out to the island is in the skiff, which is what we did. We wore survival suits because we were in the skiff and the water. So it was a completely different experience to go out to Fox Island in the wintertime, and a wonderful experience, just so different.
Yeah.
I'm glad I got to do it and see what it was like when Rockwell Kent was living there. And he really embraced the winter. He loved extreme.
Right.
He went swimming every day.
Yeah, that comes through in wilderness big time. Yeah. And I imagine you must have really embraced the winter in that visit, No small talk, no customer service, now it's really uninterrupted time while you guys are working, but uninterrupted work and uninterrupted when you want to go to your camera and your journal and your art and books and that reflection time that we all enjoy so much in the winter. I know I do. It's when I do, my writing, and now you got it, Yeah. All right. So we have another.
I could read one of those letters.
Okay.
If you would like.
Cool.
I haven't read it ahead of time, but
yeah, let's get a little letter sample, and then maybe we'll transition to kind of the idea we had for the fourth quarter of the show.
Yes.
Does that sound good?
Okay.
Cool.
This is a fairly short letter, and it's a pretty good one because it tells about an exciting time. So this is a letter that Fletch wrote to me. I was back at UNM going to school, and he said, "Susanna, received your letters and pictures yesterday. Good to hear from you." And this is after Kathleen Kent had come to visit me.
Okay.
"Sounds like you and Kathleen had a blast. Neil and Ann seem to be getting along fine. Neil said no problems when I asked, so I guess the rough spot is over. Had me worried for a while there. Hate to think of what he'd do without Ann. Had them over for a ski and sauna last weekend, and we all had a pretty good time. Last weekend was unbelievable. I had a charter with a family who are friends of the Hinkleys. They were 5, including a very small baby. They were from Australia. They just wanted to sightsee and hang out on the island, which was good for me. I could tell that a storm was brewing from the 12 to 18-foot seas out near the Berg Rocks, which we couldn't get anywhere near. Showed them Bear Glacier, but couldn't even get out to the sea lions on Rugged Island. So I headed back to our cove where a typical Caribbean line squall hit us. We idled in the cove for about an hour while 50-knot winds whipped through. The annual Seward to Seal Rocks sailing race was in process, and they were having quite a time. We finally made it to the beach where John and a couple from Astoria helped us land. Then the wind picked up our mooring anchor and began to drag. John remembered the big anchor in the shop. As it turned out, I am sure that anchor saved the Fox Islander from blowing up on the beach and total ruin. By evening, we had steady 50-knot winds and gusts to 70 knots and 6-foot seas in the cove. The boat had 3 anchors out and had dragged them to a point 1 boat length outside the surf line. One gust picked up the dory off the beach and flung it 10 feet in the air until the bow line snapped it back to the beach and kept it from flying over the new cabin. Couldn't believe that the boat and engine were okay. It was impossible to get off the beach and check the Fox Islander. Fired up the sauna for the guests and used it myself to thaw out. Blew 50 to 70 all night. At 1 a.m., there was a mayday from Maniac, which had broken its mast, dismasted, off of Kane's Head. The Jellison came out for the rescue. Magic made it to Thumbs Cove, where another boat had gone down, and there were 10 people on the beach. Musser was holed up in Humpy Cove with his dad. Sunday, with the wind at 40 knots, Musser made a run for Seward. His anchor was snagged down, so he had to leave it behind. I talked to him and recommended that he rig a sea anchor, at least. I figure he didn't carry a spare anchor. About 3 hours after talking to Musser as he passed Thumbs Cove in green water and 8-foot seas, I heard him calling the Coast Guard. His engine had quit and he was adrift. They told him to throw out a sea anchor, which he didn't have. They made it to him in time and towed him in. He called and asked to use the truck to pull his boat. I didn't dare bring in 8 people through these conditions, so I called Ann Hinckley and had her get me a sub for my first day of school. We got out to the boat and checked everything out and left Fox Island Monday around 10. What an adventure for the grandparents from Australia. I gave them a Kent book, which was greatly appreciated. After all this, I canceled the Labor Day charter, too physically and emotionally drained. Also need to pack canned goods and tools back to Seward. Think of you a lot. Don't envy your student teaching, but I do envy your weather. Miss you tons. Love, Fletch.
Nice. Yeah, see, that's so nice. Like, I'm sure there's several Fletch letters, but the reader gets to know Fletch, and through your eyes, through your writings, but then to hear his voice and have his words like that, how Fletch writes, I think a letter just has that advantage to kind of give you more. So, and there's lots of letters throughout here, so that'll be a really fun thing that readers can look forward to or revisit. For those of you who have already read the book, I imagine there are plenty out there. Fantastic, quite the storm.
Yeah.
So what was that boat race?
What did he call it? The annual Seward to Bird Rocks?
Yeah.
Do they still have that race?
I don't know about. I never heard of that. That sounds wild, especially to go out in this, or maybe just hit at the time. I think it's like a sailing race.
Yeah, a sailing race. A sailboat race is what it was. And
cool.
What did he call it? Seward to Seal Rocks, past Ialic.
Okay. Wow.
So I don't know if they still have that or not.
We're gonna look into that. I mean, this is such good Seward history is just embedded in your book. Naturally, you're telling your stories that you experienced out of Fox Island, and you have letters from people who lived around here, like John Tuttle or were around Fletch. And so there's going to be just these tidbits, which is really cool.
Yeah, for local people, there will be a lot of tidbits and probably some inaccuracies, because as a writer, you're living the experience yourself and you think that's what it is, and then you write it, and then I think I had something about tree level being 1,500 feet, and I think it might be more like 1,800.
Well, readers enjoy that too, having the upper hand a little bit. That's fine. I mean, just to contribute to Seward history, I think is such a neat part of this book. But I mean, this is the story. It seems like. So have you written other books? This is the one kind of.
Not really. We came out with 3 coloring books first.
Oh, right. I did see
before
that
I published this book.
Yeah.
And I did write the copy for those. But as far as a memoir or a full-length book, I had not.
Yeah. Or other writings, you journaled back then. Like, how is writing a part of your life now? Obviously the life of this book involves a lot of writing, doing book signings, and being here on the show. But do you write, now-ish or recently, or plans for?
Yes.
This is great, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I've continued to write. I haven't written another book-length book. I did put together another book, but it's verbatim from recordings from a local legend in New Mexico. He recorded his life story, and I put that book together with photographs. Nice. But that was more of a publication than
Right.
writing.
Yeah. That's neat.
And then I've written some blogs and things for blogs, but
Yeah.
no other full-length books.
Right. I just mean, you're a writer, so I feel like we have to write. So
Yes.
it's kind of how your outlets, of course, book manuscripts, as you know, is a big undertaking.
Very big.
So yeah, it can be intimidating always, but and just kind of a long view thing for most of us, if not all. But yeah, just as your background as an artist and writer, that's cool to hear that you have things like, okay, I'm going to write that, got to write that. This is what I feel like it's time to write this, so good to hear.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun writing it.
Yeah.
It took 7 years.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I say for this. It's probably even more, so I think that's a good number for a book.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The books that take a year, like we don't want to read those.
No.
It's like, come on. The longer, the better. All right. So I do want to make sure we cover where listeners can buy this book here in Seward.
Okay. So at the present time, the book is at the Alaska Shop. It's at the museum.
Nice.
It's at Ranting Raven, and it's at Primrose Provisions.
Yep.
And then they also have a copy at the library.
Summit Sips Coffee. Yeah, Summit Sips Coffee. I know.
Summit Sips.
That's where I saw.
Out at the
so
out
with
at the
this
trains.
book, you can get. I don't know how well you can see this, but Susan, maybe not. We have to buy it. Has a wonderful signature with an Arctic tern woven into her S. So pretty cool. I know.
Oh, and Kenai Fjords.
So
tours.
lots of places. Yeah,
Yes.
the book can be had. All right. Well, I think it's time to transition a bit. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Because it's just too good an opportunity. We have a member of the audience right here in studio. Come on set, Bill. It's not a long walk. Because we were chatting
Get the shorter studio.
Yeah, make yourself comfortable. Bill Hearn is in studio, and we are not going to let this opportunity pass us by. Of course, longtime Sewardite postmaster Bill. Thank you so much for being here. How's the show going? What do you think from an audience perspective?
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Be glad to have it done.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you so much for helping.
Thanks.
With things. It's been nice
opportunity.
meeting you and corresponding. Yeah. And we wanted to tell a story. I touched on the idea of like the life of a book, right? You put a book out there. This one, Fox Island Stories by Susan Roebuck, came out in 2003. And here we are 21 years later, and the book has had a bit of a revival. This involves, a story about a box of books in the basement of Tony's, and, that you were chatting about. So, Bill, I wanted you to maybe tell the story in regards to, how the book is now getting on these shelves more and getting in readers' hands.
Yeah, well, it started, I bought the book in 2003 when it first came out. But I was still postmaster. I retired in 2005, so I had a stack of books to read after I retired, one of which was Fox Island Stories. And I liked the book, didn't know anybody in it, but I was glad I read it in 2005. 14 years later, I happened to be at a documentary film festival in Hot Springs, Arkansas. It was the second year that I'd gone to that. I met half a dozen college friends there. They would the 2 years that we did it, they would show up on the first weekend and stay until Thursday. I would show up Tuesday and stay through the last weekend. So we would have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday together, and then I was on my own for the rest of the second weekend. So Saturday, I watched the last documentary film, which ended about 4:00 Saturday afternoon. And the ceremony for the awarding of the best book was Saturday night. Well, I went to a bar, wasn't interested in which film won the award.
Yeah.
And so I'm in my room Sunday morning, and a college friend emails me which film won the award. Well, I don't have the slightest idea. So I go down to the lobby of the Arlington Hotel in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and there's one lady sitting by herself drinking a cup of coffee. So I go up to her and say, "Do you know which film won the award last night?" She said, "No, I'm sorry, I'm just passing through." I said, "Where are you from?" She said, "I'm from Colorado." She said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Seward, Alaska." She said, "Do you know so-and-so?" And I said, "Well, yeah, he's one of my good friends up there." she said, well, my sister wrote a book about him. And I put two and two together and figured, I read that book and I had no idea that my friend was in the book because all the names were changed.
Right.
And so Susan's sister, Anne Marie, we kept in touch. She came to, that was 2019. She came to Seward the summer of 2021. And the summer of 2022, Anne Marie contacted me because Susan and her boyfriend were coming up and she wanted me to meet them. Well, I had already scheduled a trip. I was not in town 2022 when they passed through, but Anne Marie got hold of me in 2023, said Susan and her boyfriend were coming up this summer, and I was there.
Yeah.
So I met Susan and Rob the summer of 2023, and the next day Susan called me and said, I've got half a box of books. Would you mind storing them? And if the places in town that I've left books, if they need more, you can finish off the box that way. I said, yeah, no problem. And a few months later, I got an email from Susan saying, by the way, there's another 18 boxes at my sister's place in Anchorage. You know where they really should be in Seward. Where can we leave them? So we made arrangements. These extra books are in the basement of Tony's. Right now, we're down to 13 boxes in Tony's.
Nice.
And there's still a couple in the
Cutting
bedroom
into
of my
it.
house. But
Yeah.
yeah, we are cutting into it. And maybe Susan can tell where all these extra books came from.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
stuff.
I did 3 coloring books before this. My sisters and I did 3 coloring books. People might remember them. I need to print them again. It's Alaska Wildlife, the Alaska Wolf, and Arctic Animal Babies.
Nice.
And we sold those throughout the 80s. And we had a printer in Anchorage. And it's AT Printing and Publishing in Anchorage. And he's the one that printed Fox Island Stories. After I had a print run, that first print run in 2003, I had 2,000 printed and sold them out. And years passed, I always wanted to reprint it, and especially market it and do what I'm doing right now.
Right.
And I was coming up to Alaska coincidentally for the first time in about 20 years.
Oh, okay.
And my printer called. His wife called. He had passed away, and he had printed 1,000 extra copies, and they were in the warehouse somewhere way in the back. And she called and said, "Can you just come and get these books?" So I had 1,000 books to put a renewed effort in as far as marketing and promotion and
Yeah.
coming back up to Alaska and making it all happen. And those 2 things between Bill's involvement and suddenly having these books,
Right.
it pushed me to what I had been wanting to do. And now I feel like I'll be doing a rewrite and a reprint eventually.
Oh, cool. Neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this bill and the 1,000 books stowed away really breathe new life into
Breathe
this
new
book.
life.
You know, it's like, I want to print more, but to get over that hump, of course, there's money involved.
Yeah.
But here suddenly, we got a box of 1,000.
Yeah.
Not a small amount.
Not a small amount.
Pretty cool to have moved 2,000. On the initial. Nicely done.
Yeah, I was going to mention. I read the book in 2005, and after I met Anne Marie in 2019, and I knew a couple of the characters, I read the book again.
Yeah.
And then I met Susan in 2023, so I read the book a 3rd time.
Right.
I got one more sister to meet, and I'm going to read that book one more time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, books change. Of course, you have a personal connection here, but I think those good books, the second read, you find more new things. So, I mean, that obviously, listeners, like the book is worth several reads, even if you don't know the main characters. It's just, I think the sample that we've got today, just the richness to it. And this is a real part of Seward literature, which is wonderful. I'm so happy as,
And I like the storyline particularly.
Yeah.
But the next time I think I'm going to concentrate on the flora fauna. That's what slipped by me the other time.
Yeah, there's plenty of that. Like I love that long series you had about all the wildlife, very thorough. It almost seems like, you had in mind, you're writing for several types of readers, perhaps someone like Bill who knew people, but also for people outside of Alaska to be like, as someone, who came here and saw the magic. And, that sentence kind of told me that. It's like, okay, Sewardites would know all these animals, but Susan's writing for people who might come to Alaska to bring it close to them and see this amazing list of wildlife just flourishing here.
And it's a love story, which
there you go. Yeah.
Great.
Which is coming through, but that's a great pitch. People like that, readers, that keeps you turning pages.
One of the reviews said that all teenage girls need to read this book.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. I think the readership would be wide, just from the samples that we got. So,
I think so.
Yeah.
I've one thing that made me really want to reprint it is that I did receive letters from people from those first couple thousand.
Yeah.
I think I received maybe 30 letters total.
That's significant.
And they were good. They were, I loved your book.
Right.
And can you send 3 more copies? And then just word of mouth, people beaming at me saying, I loved your book. I mean, that's impactful.
Totally.
That's really impactful. It makes you believe in what you did. And,
I just thank those people, and I'm sure you did too, like, for speaking up, because as I learned with my book, like, they're not required to reach out and say, I loved your book. And, but those that do, it really matters. It gives you the, okay,
it really matters.
This is a Seward thing too. And it is true with books, like person to person. You mentioned someone at the signing who was just really happy to have you there. Like, that means so much. One person, like,
one person. Yeah.
So that's huge. So in the reprint, might you include some of those excerpts from those letters? Like, or is that, are you going to go, like, would there be new sections to the reprint?
No, I don't think it would be substantially changed.
Okay.
There's a few little facts that I do want to check.
Yep.
But I think I have a lot about my beginnings in New Mexico, and I do want to keep that because I think that it's I wasn't a competent person. I was a very undercompetent and kind of underdeveloped, immature person, naive and not worldly.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to be in there because other people are also that way. So it's nice to see that,
Definitely.
You're not alone, you know. And I think I would try to include a couple sentences explaining a little more about why that was. And now that I've lived so many more years, I understand a lot more about why that was. So I think that would also be helpful to certain people to see who may have been raised in a similar way to see that it's, I mean, you have two choices as a writer. You can kind of gloss over it, make it all nice, or you can try to be a little more authentic without like a deep dive into the psychology. You know?
Yeah.
So that's sort of my goal. Just a little more authentic there in that area.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think you need that context because, of course, you change. Here, you the person you just described, and then you move to Alaska and start building a homestead, wilderness lodge on Fox Island. There's some confidence is going to come with that.
Yes.
Some independence. So to kind of learn how Alaska can change you, that's something you got to know what you change from. So I support that. That sounds good.
Thanks.
Cool. Had another thought there. This is wonderful. Thank you so much.
I said
other stuff.
Teenage girls and old men.
Yes, right. When you have that range,
everybody in between.
It's a good book. Definitely. Yeah. And again, just the experience of, the drawings are lovely. And we've got letters. We've got New Mexico in here, which is a draw for me. So I'm reading a New Mexico author. That state's just always.
There's other chapters. One chapter is bringing a new boat up from Seattle, crossing the Gulf of Alaska.
Yeah.
Christmas in Eagle, Alaska.
Cool.
I had friends there and spent Christmas there. And so, it's not only Fox Island.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Good hits, Bill. Keep getting them in. This is the part of the show where I'm like, what else do we got to say? Oh, I should have said that. So you're good coming in fresh. But that did strike me right away, Fox Island stories. And here we are in New Mexico to start.
Yeah.
And so to hear, Anchorage, Eagle, these places like,
right.
Sure, there's a lot in Fox Island, but this is, like any, there's tributaries that connect back to Fox Island.
We've
Other
thought about
locations.
changing the title
Mhm.
to Stories from the Fox Island Years,
Okay.
Mhm.
which would cover stories about anywhere as
Right,
long as
right.
it was in that year range.
Yeah, but I mean, we got such a following here. You know,
That's true.
We got to connect, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get the book and you find out, or you watch this episode and you get the behind the scenes on
Mhm.
some details.
Mhm.
Lots of reasons to go purchase this book ASAP at all those places that were mentioned: Primrose Provision, Summit Sips Coffee, Ranting Raven, KFT, the Alaska Shop, the museum. I was just there.
Mhm.
Lovely Tsunami Swim Club exhibit going on, so you can go check that out.
Mhm.
Pick up Susan's book. That's cool to have it at the museum, and I think very appropriate, for this type of historical literature to be in the museum. And those are all signed, right?
Yeah, so we've been going to the museum. We gave them all signed copies, and then we've been going to the other stores that already had some remaining copies and switching those out for signed copies.
Cool.
And there are books at the Fox Island gift shop.
Okay.
And we're going to go out there tomorrow. We're not carrying books to trade them, but hopefully she'll have time to sign the ones that are
Gotcha.
stocked out there.
Yeah.
So, and I'm when she leaves, I'm supposed to have a store of signed copies. So
Yeah.
when people run out, I can still provide more.
Yeah, I was
signed
going to say
copies.
those 15 boxes all signed.
Well,
Mhm.
no.
We got to get there.
I think
No,
we'll
not
probably
this trip.
sign about 5 or 6 on
Yeah,
them.
well,
100.
I've gotten really good at the bird.
Totally. The bird is awesome. You want that
Yeah.
for sure. It's
It's-
awesome.
Yeah.
would her signature with the bird show up on the camera?
Yeah, I did it before.
Oh, you
I'll
did
do
it
it's worth
before?
doing
Okay,
again.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got an important job here, but nothing you're not used to as former postmaster. Even dealing with packages. Now you got boxes and boxes of books. So there's that, I'm reaching. That's what happens at the end. There we go. So there's the turn. Of course, a Seward bird. I've had some successful nesting here this summer, which is awesome to see.
It's
And
wonderful.
Lovely.
you do it.
I love it.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
it's all
Yeah.
about the guests. Set up well. So, and we were due. So, I'm always excited, but I think having had maybe a month or so, hard to remember. Summer is going, but really nice to slow it down on a slower day. Like we're through the 4th of July now, I actually got to my computer this morning. I'm starting to sense that kind of writing chance, and of course, it's just a great day as a writer to be able to listen to your words and you talk about these stories, and now I have the book to just stay with it today on kind of a slow day for me. So, other things that you want to mention here, Susan, before we say goodbye?
Let's see. Well, we are going out to Fox Island tomorrow. I haven't been out there in 21 years.
Oh wow!
And I did go out in 2003. And it was kind of an overwhelmingly emotional experience.
Sure.
But I'm excited about going out again tomorrow, and really, really excited about it. So it'll be amazing and brand new and just so different on so many levels.
Yeah.
I understand that hundreds of people go out to Fox Island every day now.
Yeah.
So, and
Little
I'll be
different.
one of the hundreds.
Right. You'll be arriving with a big crew of tourists. Yeah.
Mhm, yeah.
Hopefully, you don't have to make any small talk.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be powerful.
Yes, it'll be powerful.
Maybe
Yeah.
some writing will come of that.
Possibly.
Who knows?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, or just crying.
Or just crying. Or just crying.
I'll mention my only trip to Fox Island, I think, was 1996,
Okay.
which was the first year after Tom Tugas bought that part of Fox Island and built the larger lodge.
Yeah.
Had lunch there, knew nothing about it. The book wasn't out yet. And so I'm looking forward to going back also. And I think the transition from wilderness where one person or two people are experiencing the wilderness but not sharing it.
Right.
Here we had three people experiencing the wilderness and sharing it to a certain extent, but not touching the wilderness or touching it as little as possible.
Yeah.
And then Kenai Fjords Tours, which of course, to share that experience with lots of people, you have to touch the wilderness a bit.
Yep.
But still, there's an advantage to having more people
Right.
at least experience a little bit of it.
Mhm.
So I think this book is a good transition from wilderness to this book to Kenai Fjords Tours,
Yeah.
which is employs hundreds.
Yeah, well put.
Mhm.
That is such a thing here in Seward, that trade-off
Mhm.
of, of course, preserving nature, ultimate goal, and just always in our minds. But there is, keep
One
going.
other
Yeah,
thing,
Stay with it.
Susan, when she painted the new lodge, she went into Brown and she almost read it today, but she got paint at Brown and Hawkins and got it mixed into the color so that the lodge out there would blend in with the scenery, because she did not want, a yellow lodge against the wilderness
Sure.
of Fox Island.
Yeah,
So her goal was to
Blend
preserve.
in.
Yeah.
Because
blend
I
in,
think
exactly.
it's perfect,
Yeah.
from how it is. And so,
So you're in Fletcher's Wilderness Lodge, or was that the name of it?
it was called Fox Island Wilderness Lodge.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So can you talk about what that looks like today, or is that something?
Well,
that people-
I will find out more
Okay,
tomorrow,
right,
but
right.
I know the old cabin burnt down because my dad continued going out to Fox Island and going out with Fletcher on his boat
wow.
for a few years more, probably at least 10 more years,
Okay.
maybe 20. And so he had been out to Fox Island and he learned that the old cabin had burnt down.
Okay.
He took a picture of the main cabin that we built, and it was being used. It had a sign on it, Kenai Fjords Tours. So they did use it for a while. I think maybe at least 3 seasons. And
Okay.
I don't think it's there anymore though.
Okay.
And then the cabin that we built down on the far end of the beach, which we called the Woods Cabin, it might still be there. It was the nicest. It was my favorite, and it was a nice romantic kind of spot. So
Cool.
I'll find out tomorrow.
So you guys had 3 buildings.
We had 4 altogether.
Okay.
So we had the old cabin, then we built the middle cabin. We also had a sauna that we built
Right.
and a workshop. And then the main cabin and the Woods cabin.
Cool.
Yeah.
So 4 cabins, workshop, sauna, kind of
Mm.
6 buildings.
Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah.
I hope it's there.
Some of it might still be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you bringing camping gear to stay the night and just?
No, we're
stay
just
there?
going on the 5-hour
Well,
tour.
yeah.
So we're going out for lunch, and then we'll see what transpires.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Well, that's amazing. The story continues
Mm-hmm.
in life. It's
Yeah.
in these pages too.
Yep. So, I can't remember what I was going to say.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'll do the call here, and if you got one more thing to kind of send us away on, this has been fantastic.
It has been.
Yeah.
It has been. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Yeah, happy to do it and be a part of it. I'm Sean Ullman. I'm the host here on Seward Sound Words, and what a gift always. And today to have Susan Roebuck reading from her book Fox Island Stories, about Fox Island and other places, and Bill Hearn here for support. The book agent, seller, whatever you want to call it, helper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm her favorite volunteer Seward book agent.
There you go.
Can't
Nice.
beat that.
Yeah. Are you looking for more work?
He's been asked that a couple times.
Sure. Yeah.
Lori Crate at the Alaska shop offered me a job as I'm trying to promote this book
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah. You do it good. Well, thank you, Bill, for hopping in here. This really added a special
My pleasure.
aspect to the show too.
My pleasure.
I'm sure
Thanks.
people like hearing your voice and seeing you. Thanks so much, Susan.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. I enjoyed
Congrats.
this. It's been
Congrats
exciting.
on the revival to the book, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. And we'll be in touch certainly now that we've exchanged books and exchanged some stories here in conversation. So
Great.
yeah.
Great.
And I had seen this book, but didn't know who Sean Ullman was.
Yeah.
So now I bought the book, and I'm looking forward to reading it.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I love that stack you had for retirement. I think people closing on retirement maybe have such a thing. Stack of books. That's what I'm gonna do.
I'm one that actually made
Followed-
a dent in this.
Follow
in this
through.
stuff.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So cool. All right. Well, Susan, unless you got something else, it always takes me a moment to kind of wake up this mouse, and it's a little awkward as I try to close down the show. But Thank you all so much. Come on.
Mouse asleep.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, we could do just the cold leave, and I tell Wolf to get in here. Maybe if I click. Yep, there, that did it. All right. Thank you all so much for listening. Apologies. Thank you all so much for listening here on Seward Soundwords on 91.7 KIBH FM Seward, and on YouTube at our @Sacktown channel. Really fun show today. Always is, but this one a little extra special with everything involved. Susan being here, Bill being here, both of you going out to Fox Island tomorrow to explore the next chapter of this.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
What do your call letters mean? We were curious about that.
Yeah, I think we're clear. By the way, usually I see a little something different, but certainly changed. Kina KIBH.
You know, every place has the K.
Right.
At the beginning,
Right, Alaska. Yeah, good question for Wolf. You know, I know it involved like Kenai Mountain Radio is in the whole list of the name. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah.
Well, good question. But
Keep my ears
I just try to
open,
say it, you know, because it's fun. You feel like a radio DJ.
91.7 is all I could find, and then
Yeah.
on my car radio today, I saw the IBH. That was the first I knew the call letters.
Right. Yeah.
Apparently, I haven't listened to your show enough, but
That's all right. Yeah.
I will now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think we're clear. We kind of keep talking for a moment as if people are listening.
Oh, okay.
I don't think they are, but I always try to be careful. You know, there's that relief, and then we can step out too. But no, it's so the show started as just radio, and we'd go live on the radio, which was pretty cool. And turns out like a lot of people don't have radios, so a lot of people listening in their car, which is kind of fun and old fashioned because you do have that. But then I don't know, about probably halfway through now, I would say half episodes just radio, half now YouTube. Wolf had the idea to do YouTube and just kind of get that going, and I was all about it because now we have an archive. You can go watch the show right now. You guys can revisit it.
One of my pet peeves is periodically they have the tsunami warning announcement.
Yeah,
and they tell everybody turn on your local radio station to get the latest updates.
Yeah,
I've lived here 30 years, and I just found out a year ago what my local radio station was.
Yeah,
and I wish that
had 91.7.
How would a tourist know?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It should have that exact.
And I called the borough about it.
Yeah,
they didn't seem interested, but if they talk to you about being the update station, you can tell them what you need to tell us what the number is.
Right. How would you find it? Yeah, that's a good point. I suppose maybe like it could change, though it's been so solid for a while. Maybe that's part of it.
Yeah. I mean, you can. The borough can change the recording.
Yeah, change it. Like get people right to it. Because
could be life or death.
Like I have a tsunami in my book, kind of at the end, and I wrote it up, before having gone through a warning, and then went through a pretty, legit shake.
Was that the Tonga volcano or which one?
Let's see. We're going back some years. There were two. One was our daughter was probably like 1, so maybe we're going back like 7 years. And they're both like middle of the night.
Yep.
This one just like bed didn't stop shaking. It's like okay, and then put the radio on, and Wolf, I think he was at the high school at the time, just live getting all the sources, and really how I rewrote things was all based on how it actually went. A real warning with him. And it really helped. Like I was, I learned so much about what an actual tsunami could be. Of course, it was just a warning. Well, there was an earthquake, and obviously, but it helped. It helped a lot. I think I have told him. I should again, but it was interesting. And it is important to what's where are we safe? Does there need to be this mass exodus from town? Like, not necessarily. Like, it's really like town hall is kind of known as the spot that you need to be out of. But, a lot of town is up on the hill, up near Little Canyon, and the hospital is is a bit of a safe haven, right there in town. So just to kind of decrease that panic and kind of know where you are safe or where to go. And he's just tapped in, of course, if internet goes, he's still, with their ham radio stuff, like radio's still like the ultimate that can hang on. So, and he's dedicated and he's also, does a good job, like in these kind of live where he's on air, like not panicking and just, keeping, it's really important, I think, at a time when people could get a little freaked out to get like accurate information.
When a police officer knocks on your door at 1 a.m. and says, go to higher ground.
Yeah.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah. Well, that means you're in the inundation zone. But I had learned what the inundation zone was, having lived downtown up on 2nd. I was like, oh, we're good. So
you're good?
Well, where I was, on 2nd.
Far enough.
I guess I'm on the hill. Yeah, I was like kind of right at the crest. Yeah, near like Jeep Trail.
Yeah.
And that helped so much where I could, and then he'd be, just with the updates, like, okay, we don't quite know. Yeah, we're waiting on this. Just stay with us. It's just kind of a memorable middle of the night. Our daughter, baby, just kept sleeping, which was great.
Yeah. The radio is important.
Totally.
Yeah. People might forget nowadays.
Right. But yeah, it's that the radio will still work. And so, yeah. It's been real fun being a part of it. It's a good group of people who just, have kept it going. Wolf, Becky, George Odell, and just, it's taken their effort. It's volunteer run. No one's getting it, so we're really lucky to have it.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
We when I was coming into town, I came in on the train this year because I just wanted to take a different route to Seward and. Had never done that before, and it passed. I think the train passed a pretty big building further out that has towers, and I thought, oh, that must be the radio station.
Yeah, probably.
And then yesterday, Bill said, "Let's go find it," and it was this tiny little.
Smaller. I mean, those might be his like transmitters or whatever to get signal wherever that is. I know there is stuff up the road, so the station's carried.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I'm posting this on Facebook. This is the little place I'm saying. This is where I was.
Yeah.
Because it's cool.
Right. It fits with Seward. I think.
It really does, and that's what I love about Seward is it's still Seward.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, let me get a picture, like from the inside, showing what it looks like inside to compare to what it looks like outside.
Sure.
I don't know where would be the best place to.
Probably standing in the door.
Yeah, whatever. You get a couple angles.
Or maybe from that corner.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the show went like 125, so that's good.
Oh, did it? Oh, wow.
It didn't.
Hopefully it wasn't too much.
No, that's how it always goes. Like, I didn't want to stop a minute sooner. Just,
Good.
It's rich.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Good.
That Fox Island, the Kent connection, how you met her granddaughter, like that works. I mean, this was.
Yeah, she
was
was
a good one.
She was a lot of fun. She came out to New Mexico, and we went to Bandelier National Monument, which is up near Los Alamos.
Wow.
And that was a memorable trip.
But
I haven't seen her since then.
That's a little while ago.
Yeah, that was 1985.
Oh,
probably. Wow. She still lives back east, although Chris Kent lives in Homer, last I knew.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. As far as I know, he's still there.
Cool. New Mexico, it has been coming up last few years, like Alaska connection, just like people like loving it, like rugged and just free and, just variety of landscape. And it had just been, I mean, of course, Taos, and I have a friend who now lives in Santa Fe. He just loves, this idea of like, you can ski, you can be in the desert.
Yeah.
Just loved it.
Yeah.
And so we're big bird watchers. And so Arizona just works really well for us.
Yeah.
And so we're going to keep going into,
Good.
you can fly straight to Phoenix, I'm sure, as you know.
Yeah.
And, I think that's going to be kind of a regular trip, and I'm excited to explore more New Mexico. I love Las Cruces. We went to White Sand, like the Oregon Mountains.
I live pretty close to there now.
Cool.
So I live about 70 miles north of Las Cruces.
Cool.
And so you should come visit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bring your family.
Sounds good.
Yeah. New Mexico is different from any of the other lower 48 states.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit similar to Alaska.
Yeah.
There's people that just make their own way
Right.
a lot more than other states that I've lived in.
Yeah.
And a lot of creative people.
Oh, we're still live. Okay.
Oh,
Thanks,
really?
Wolf.
So it's a big, long show.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. I tried to. Bonus. Yeah, well, I did. Yeah, well, I don't see a chance to click it now, but we'll step out of the studio and you can come in and take care of it. Where is it? It's like a different picture. Yeah. Cool. We'll step out. Thanks, man. I had a feeling, so we kept it. That's great.
But yeah, we've got our 3 months of misery in the winter, and they have their New Mexico has their 3 months of misery in the summer.
Uh-huh.
You can
Well,
take the 110 degrees.
I think I must have
now that's
clicked on the
Arizona.
wrong
That's
thingy.
not as much New Mexico.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, it
You-
will be
you-
someday, but so far
That's great.
we're still in the
We were
upper.
still live. Sorry about that. Sorry, everybody. That's what you get with me at the controls. Thank you all.
Well, thank you for the book.
For sure, yeah.
And that was a wonderful experience. Loved it very much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice work.
Good to
You were
meet
great.
you.
Yeah, I'll see you around, Bill.
How old is your daughter?
She is 8.
Oh, okay. So the only way to
show how real we are on air. Nothing really changed. It is, yeah. Yeah, I would text you right now. You might need to stop. Can you? I said, like, I think we might still be live, so we acted totally as if we might be. You know, with extra stuff. But can you chop off the? Here?
Yeah. I'll get it today. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay, show me what to do.
Dump. We got a mouse. Yeah, we got a mouse. So, well, it doesn't say it's live. I don't know how it could still be going. Well, should be processing. Ah, here we go. Now I got it. Hi, everybody. Oh, you're up there. Yes.